It's the most wonderful time of the year again, and perhaps you're already starting your holiday shopping for everyone on your list, but how can you make sure you don't break the bank this holiday season? Steve Siebold is a certified financial educator and author of the book, How Money Works. He joins us now to talk about some ways to keep our spending in check. Welcome to Studio 10, Steve.
Hi, thanks.
Hey, so it's easy to get wrapped up in the spirit of the season when it comes to buying gifts this year. What should we be using as our guide?
Well, I think you have to use logic and keep emotion out of it. I mean, Madison Avenue is famous and very successful for manipulating our emotions and getting us to buy things we can't afford. And then we end up in January with a bunch of credit card bills that we don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you say that we should be making a budget for each person on our list. How does that work? What do you suggest?
Exactly. Break down what you can afford in cash only. No credit cards, just cash. Per person, divided among how many people that you're going to buy gifts for, and stick to the budget. So again, you don't end up with bills that you can't pay.
Is there a specific? I mean, it's probably based on income and kind of how we're feeling that year. But is there a good rule of thumb to start with, like X amount of dollars per person?
Boy, Madison Avenue would love to get us on that one, just like they did with the engagement ring, saying you have to pay 2 months of your annual salary on your engagement ring. They've been doing that. They've been manipulating the public for 40 years on that deal. I would say only budget what you can afford at the end of the day. I mean, it totally depends on what you have, but make sure you only use cash. That's really key.
And Steve, I know we can get tricked and suckered into all kind of fancy marketing. How do we not fall for their slick campaigns they come up with?
Well, again, I think you have to think with logic and don't get sucked into the sort of the slick marketing as you called it. It's really, the season obviously is about giving, and it's about, reflecting and being with family and that type of thing. It really has nothing to do with gifts. That was all created by marketers over the years. And we've bought into this thing that it's all about the gifts under the tree. And it really has nothing to do with the gifts under the tree. It's all about the season and, the spirit of Christmas and all that kind of thing. And I think we need to remember that.
Yeah, we can sometimes lose the spirit of the season by getting so wrapped up in these marketing campaigns. So I want to say that we agree on this. There's no shame in telling our family, hey, we have to be a little lean this year on presents. It's been rough on all of us, and money's kind of tight all around. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. And this pandemic is not going away anytime soon. I mean, this is, you can listen to all the politicians that you want to, but if you listen to the scientists, this could go on for a long time, which means the economy could tighten up in a very, very big way. A lot of people are saying that that's going to happen. And so you don't know what next year brings. You might not have a job in 3 months. You just don't. Hopefully it will, but you just don't know. So I would keep that in mind and make it a teachable moment for the people in your family and also your kids and grandkids.
And you kind of mentioned this earlier, but talk to me a little bit more about the credit card thing. Like, sometimes we get tricked into I can get cash back or I can get all these flight benefits. Should we be reaching for the plastic or just really try and limit ourselves?
I would use your credit cards like the rich do, which means you use them as a convenience and you pay them off every single month. And if you can't pay them off, don't use them. You only use cash because that's the fastest way to get behind. The banks are charging, 17, 18, 19, 20%. And that means their money is doubling every 3 or 4 years, while, passbook savings accounts and other kinds of accounts that banks give us are doubling maybe every 800 years or 1,000 years based on their rates of return. So that's why the banks are so rich. So stop making them rich and start making yourself richer.
I like the thought of that. Make myself richer, not the banks. And what about charitable giving? Does that kind of need to be reeled in this year? I mean, I know charity's hurting. We're hurting ourselves. How does that work with the charitable giving?
Well, I think that when it comes to some spare change, it's always nice to be able to give a little bit. There's a lot of people really suffering out there, especially now. But for the most part, leave charity to the wealthy. The wealthy people can afford this. This country is 1% of this country, and 1/10 of 1% of this country is so rich, it's almost obscene. They're the ones that fund the charities that drive all philanthropy. They can afford to donate millions and millions of dollars, whereas the average person can't afford to donate very much at all. So be very, very careful about getting sucked in to donating things you can't afford. Donate to your own family. That would be the best thing you can do for yourself, your family, and really the country.
And speaking of family, Steve, how can we get the whole family on board with our kids and with budgeting? How can we get them involved?
I think it's really about teaching the family, the kids, the grandkids, everyone you can, how money works. That's why we wrote this book, so a 14-year-old kid could understand the most important concepts in personal finance. That's why this book, I think, is #1 in the country for 2020 on this topic, because it's so easy. I would start with education. Everything really begins with education.
All right, Steve Siebold with the financial and budgeting advice as we head into this holiday season. Thank you so much for your time. All right, guys.